Well, hello, everyone. Just to make sure you're in the right place, you are here to engage with youth and higher education experts looking at climate change response. And today we're going to have cases from Kenya and the United States. It's going to be a fantastic dialogue, and we're delighted to welcome you all. I'm Yolande Legrandveau. I'm the co-champion of the community of practice on higher education engagement and transformation, and it's an honor to be working with our colleagues from the another community of practice. And my colleague Laura is going to introduce herself, and I'm going to pass it over to her.
Thank you, Yolande. Yeah, this has been a great collaboration. We have an excellent topic and lineup of speakers for you today. I'm going to keep my camera off today due to that old virus that we all have that has hit me, but I wanted to introduce my co-champion, Jack Omondi, who's going to give some details about BEPSE and introduce the first speaker. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lara, for the introduction. I am Jack Omondi from Kenya. I'm the youth advisor for business entrepreneurship and private sector engagement community of practice, always shortened as BEPSE COP. And this COP focuses on how donors, governments, and financial entities support young entrepreneurs and how to work with the private sector leaders. Actually, you can join our discussion group through a link that I think will be provided in the chat. And from that discussion group, we have a lot of amazing resources that we always share, and great discussions going on. Before I introduce our speakers, I would like to introduce one of youth advisors from the HEET group, Albina, to introduce herself and also give a brief overview of the HEET COP.
Thank you, Jack. My name is Albina Tortpaeva. I think we can go to slide where we have HEET information. So as Jack said, we today represent two different community of practices, which are kind of global working groups, platforms to network, share some learning. And I represent with Yolanda today higher education engagement and transformation community of practice. We call it HEET. You will have this link below in the slides, which we will share with you after the event. So please go and register and post any questions. We usually post some events and some products which you can use. And basically the whole aim of HEET is to engage expertise with the international education community to advance higher education and youth learning priorities. Engage all the youth to integrate how we call transformational positive youth development approaches. So we strengthen link between PYD and higher education programming. Yes, as Stephanie put in the chat, there are links you can use to join our community of practices to register. Can we go please to agenda quickly? It was before. Today we have introductions and welcome, as we have just did. We shared shortly about what is BEPSE, what is HEET community of practice. We shared links you can go to learn more. And we have amazing 3 speakers from all over the world. This is what I love about such events. You can network with everyone. We'll have 2 universities today sharing their experience, how they work with climate challenges, issues on the faculty, teaching and learning, how it impacts economic development. And then we have youth perspective as well, who will tell about their own ideas, how they see the climate issue should be addressed in this regard. We have Columbia University from US, we have Daystar University from Kenya. Then we will have some discussion and questions where we can all share our ideas. I think now we can go to introducing speakers. Jack.
Thank you so much, Albina, for that brief overview. And as Albina has said, we have 3 amazing speakers from Kenya and the United States of America, who will present to us on how learning institutions are winning against climate crisis, which is the current emerging issue in the world, and how we can leverage on the skills, determination, and passion of the young people in designing climate change programming. These speakers are Professor Martha and Chris Avram from Kenya, specifically from Daystar University, and Sandra Goldmark from Columbia University, United States of America. Our first speaker to take us through this topic will be Martha, who will share with us on how Daystar University is winning against climate crisis. Before she comes in, let me give you a brief introduction of who Martha is. Martha is a professor of public health and the current dean at the School of Health and Engineering at the Daystar University, which is located in Nairobi, Kenya. She has served over 27 years of teaching, research, and administration at the university level. She is a member of the scientific committee and the editorial board member of the International Conference on Climate Change by the International Institute of Knowledge Management, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. She's also a visiting professor with Kosin University and also the patron of the Environmental Club at Daystar University. Welcome, Martha.
Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity to give the Daystar story, which I'll call a successful story in terms of addressing climate change. I'll simply give the story as it is in Daystar. So Daystar, to start with, is a private university, not a government-owned university, located in what we call Lukenya area of Machakos County. That is outside Nairobi, but we do have a campus within the Nairobi city. The area where Daystar is located is a very dry area. As one who came to Daystar many years ago, my first experience when I got to Daystar was, what a place, very unpleasant place to be, very dusty, very hot. But as we progress through my story, you will see it is possible to win the environment, make it a better place, change the microclimate to suit that which works for you, only if you work with the environment. So I'm talking about a place where when we came in to start the university, it was a very dry place, an area with no rains. And when the rains came, probably once or twice a year, they would be very erratic, heavy rains that would cause very serious soil erosion. And definitely, the place was not, or is not, a very suitable place for settlement in terms of human habitation. And again, the people that lived in this area were people that were keeping animals or cattle, so they did not have much of environmental awareness. My first diagram there shows Daystar. We first came to Daystar, the current position, in 1992. So what you see in my first diagram, I wish I could point where you do not have the high-rise building. That is Daystar in 1996. We had just settled. And some of the buildings you see there next to the hill is actually the university coming up. You can see the soils are exposed. The vegetation is very, very scarce. And next to that, you can see Daystar about 4 to 6 years later. This is in the year 2002. And I'm going to tell you how this happened. So in the year 2002, you can actually see the area that is Daystar, but beyond Daystar, you can see the dry, scattered place with no vegetation, very dry environment can still be seen. You look at the campus, you can see the campus still looks not very habitable, but we're still moving. Let's move to the next slide. And this is Daystar in the year 2010. And I have something to say about the year 2010. At this point, Daystar was trying to work with the environment by working with what is in the environment. You can see we have the indigenous thorny bushes and trees that we found within the campus, and we were trying to manage them. I know I should be talking about the youth. I'll tell you how the youth got in. So this is Daystar, probably from, you can think of 1992 to the year 2010. You can see still change is feasible. Let's move to the next slide. This is now Daystar. As if you came to Daystar, this is what you see. On where you have the clock with the blue and without the Kenyan flag, that is the Daystar we had in the year 2020. Very beautiful, well done. You can actually see these two photographs are taken. One is actually almost like you stand in the middle, you take one photo behind you, and you turn and take the other photo in front of you. So in the second photograph, that is 2022, the current situation, and that shows the main entrance into the university. And all the series of the photos that I've shown you were actually pictures or photos that represent the same area. So between 1994 to the year 2020, this is how Daystar has changed. This is Daystar University between 1996, 92 and 2022, a period as a span of about, call it 20 years or less than 20 years, but this is what Daystar has become. So how did we get here? Let's look at, so we're saying the first thing is that the university acknowledged the area where it is situated is dry, is prone to water shortage, dry, dusty weeds, dry spells, prolonged ones, sometimes with no rain for many years, minimum vegetation, and the campus did not give any interesting or attractive ambience to students for learning. So the first thing is, and then at the same time, many people are coming into this area because it's about, in terms of kilometers, it's about 30 kilometers from the Nairobi, which is the main metropolitan. Is 30 kilometers from Nairobi. People are coming in to settle. They were clearing the area. So a lot of degradation was happening in here. And Daystar is the only major institution that is in this place. So something happened. So it was agreed that the whole community, that is the staff, the faculty, the students, and later on the neighbors, need to be involved in making this place habitable and help us push the dry or try to create an environment that is habitable for humans. By the way, this place was full of animals. It wasn't empty. We had a lot of wildlife around here, but even the wildlife itself was not getting enough water to drink. So if we get to the next slide, now we get to how did Daystar work? First, number one was mainstreaming sustainability and environmental issues in the teaching for all Daystar students in 1998. And this is when I got to work in Daystar now as a full-time member of faculty. Previously, I used to teach as a young person coming from Nairobi, teaching as an adjunct part-time faculty. So in 1998, I was invited to join faculty in Daystar. And one of the reasons why I came was to develop courses that would teach and train students on environmental issues and sustainability. So in phase 2, you are teaching in class, yes, but then in phase 2 was involve the students in planting trees around the campus, and at the same time encourage them to care for the trees. And the first planting, we did what we are calling indigenous trees. This place was very dry, very hot. The soils were very thin, so we could not do anything else other than plant trees that were actually harvested from a similar environment. So students became part of the people that were planting the trees. They were also the ones giving care to these young seedlings. And in classrooms, we were teaching them how to get involved in environmental issues and environmental sustainability. Let's get to the next slide, please. So in phase 3, this is where now we developed a course, environmental science, and this course really was teaching environmental problems, issues on degradation, We were teaching the effect of man on the environment, the greenhouse effect, what is climate change, and then the role of man in pushing back the whole issue of climate change. How can man, and this time, remember, it's our students who are learning. How can they, though young, those students, though doing many other courses, in Daystar we teach business, we teach theology, we teach communication is our main course, we teach law, we teach nursing, we teach biomedical sciences, we teach public health, but all these students were required or are still required to be part of this environmental course that will help them understand the whole concept of climate change. So in phase 4, we had what we are calling now the student-led environmental sustainability activity. So this was set in motion now through student clubs at the school level and then regional level, national level. And for us in Daystar, we created a club, or we took a club that probably had started even earlier than phase 4, a club that was properly named as the Environmental Club. And we gave them the responsibility of leading the other students on campus in as far as caring for the environment was concerned. We also enabled them to partner with the clubs from other universities, from high schools, from interested parties all across Kenya, and including partnering with NGOs that work within the area of environmental sustainability and climate change. So we are now moving from just teaching them in class, planting trees, and having them now take over matters environment, so that when they plant a tree, they don't just plant and go, they take care of the tree. And around the tree planting, they also bring in other areas of interest that will help them understand how the trees and the environment are related to climate change. Let's go to the next slide. So we have the phase 5, which now we are actually now at phase 5. As we got into the year 2019 all the way to 2020, we had this period of intense tree planting. And one of the members present here, Chris Wawero, was actually one of the key drivers during this phase 5, intense tree planting, where we did more than 15,000 trees in 2 phases. So these efforts were student-led. The seedlings were obtained by the university, yes, but the students led by their environmental club and other interested groups were involved in planting these trees and caring for them. They still do that. And then the efforts were now, as they plant the tree, we also get them involved in other efforts. For example, what is known as the student-led green diaries, where they would have challenges around the whole area of climate change. And of course, with the tree planting as a major activity, they did not just plant trees within our campus. If we would require them to actually even do tree planting with our neighbors. For example, Machakos County, where Daystar is, has a major stadium known as the Machakos People's Park. We had them lead a whole day of tree planting every year. So they would go to the county government, organize a day where the county government and its people would be led by the Daystar students through the environmental club to plant trees. And each student would learn their own green diary. And then at the end of the year, they would hold competitions. How well? And these competitions were not limited to Daystar alone. They are encouraged, and they do invite students from other universities, from other organizations, NGOs of similar mind and interest. So the end effect is to create a culture of environmental literacy and consciousness within the university and the community around the university. Let's get to the next slide. So what we are saying is now that the student clubs continue to plant more trees. they continue. So after we had done the trees and the compound is now green, is well forested, we bring in other factors. For example, the plastic correction and recycling activity, which I think was also one of the major projects that we went into when Chris was the chairman of the environmental club in Kenya. So the students now network with those from other Kenyan universities through what we call the Green Space Universities Initiative. This is an initiative that was called, where the universities were called around the table by the UNEP, which is stationed or headquartered in Nairobi, Kenya, and a group was formed. Interested universities, and each university, depending on where they are located, would choose an activity. Those universities that are within the city center were doing green energy, solar energy. We in Daystar looked at our environment, and we are still taming our environment. We are still pushing back what I described at the beginning. So we continued with the tree planting. The university level got into
it seems we lost Martha.
You muted me.
Oh.
Where was I? Can I go back several slides?
Oh, actually, so just to make sure we have time for questions and discussion at the end, if you want to share a final thought, Martha,
Yes,
then we can move on to Chris.
I was actually calling for my final slide because I can see I'm finishing. My final slide. So probably just to close, I can say that Daystar has worked through its own students, getting them involved, getting them to lead, getting them in charge to help bring our campus from where I showed you using my photographs to where we are. We've created a very beautiful very green environment. And we are saying that the efforts continue, because the idea is to make this concept sustainable. And we have now welcomed our neighbors, the community around us, to join in the activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof, for that great presentation. Having visited your school, Daystar University, I can really confirm that Daystar has led and created solutions that are impacting the local communities, especially the young people, when it comes to climate crisis. And I can confirm this through also from discussions we had with Chris, who is also our next speaker. Chris, I met Chris in one of the environmental conferences, and this is a young man who is a role model to the young people, doing tremendous work in terms of giving solutions to climate change. Chris currently serves as the Chief of Operations Officer for the Wisensoft company and the station manager for Shine FM, a radio station at Daystar University. He is also a former student leader and the first recipient of the Star Environmental Champion of the Year award at the same university. I've mentioned that I met Chris through an environmental conference, meaning this guy has attended a lot of global conferences on environment, especially the first ever Sustainable Blue Economy and the second UN Habitat Youth Blue Economy Conference in Kenya. Chris, welcome and share your thought, contributions on how we can involve the young people in creating and designing solutions for climate change.
Thank you so much, Jack, for the introduction. Just before I start, I'd just like to make sure I'm audible to everyone. So kindly, you can confirm that before I proceed.
Yeah, Chris, we can hear you.
Perfect. So as you've heard, my name is Wawero Chris Abraham. serve currently as a Chief Operations Officer for the license of company, as well as a Station Manager for Shan FM Daystar, which is Daystar University's premier radio station. I'd like to talk today about climate change from a youth perspective and how we can interlink the higher education institutions as well to provide solutions. My first discussion would have to be with Professor Martha Carey, who is actually our patron at the Environmental Club. I'd like to speak a bit about that and some of the initiatives that we undertook at Daystar University. So we started this conversation around the year 2018. We sat down, had a very lengthy discussion, and decided to have an interdisciplinary approach towards climate change. So this involved research, adoption and mitigation measures, as well as youth and student involvement. So we went ahead and formed the Daystar Environmental Club, which we later rebranded to the Daystar Environmental and Sustainability Club, locally known as Daystar Mazingira. And what we did with this club, our end goal was to achieve a cleaner, greener, healthier, and sustainable Daystar University, as well as to educate and implement environmental ethics for sustainable.
Did sound cut out for any others?
Yeah. It
Right.
seems we have lost Chris.
All right, let's give. Oh, Chris, you came back for a moment.
Oh,
Can you hear
apologies
us?
for that. Yes,
No.
I can. Can you hear us?
Yeah, we can.
Perfect. I don't know where I dropped off.
You dropped off somewhere where you were talking about the initiatives that you undertook with Prof. Martha at the university.
Perfect. All right. So we put in place a strategic plan to achieve what we are calling our Green Daystar, which would run from 2019 to 2023, and it had 5 thematic pillars that were guiding us. So we had, pardon me, afforestation, energy efficiency, waste management, water management, and sustainable agriculture. So I'd just like to take a minute of your time to take you through this plan. As Professor Martha Carey has mentioned, we set a goal of planting over 15,000 trees at the main campus in Athi River. And this was because we realized Athi River is an arsal area, it's an arid and semi-arid land. So we need more tree cover to boost 5 things. Number one, the beauty of the school, to have trees that are medicinal, beauty, of course, multi-purpose, and the one that we really focused more towards the end was fruit trees. Now, what were the benefits of all of this? Number one, we wanted to beautify the school. The photo that she shared, we planted palm trees all the way up, a total of about 100 palm trees. We introduced as well multi-purpose trees, and this affected us into also starting a bee apiary for the school. We also implemented fruit trees where we were looking at it at an approach of we need to boost diet for our students. So maybe we can have different fruit trees where students can benefit from. And this culminated in us planting over 15,000 trees through different drives during the year. We went on to our second thematic pillar, which was energy efficiency. Owing to the fact that Daystar University is, of course, situated in an arsal area, we have more natural sun and more natural wind than we'd hoped for. So we set aside a plan to introduce clean and green energy. And this started with us doing research on what would be the best approach to this. We put in place data logging to find, of course, to understand our energy audit and to understand how much the university of clean and green energy to supplement the power that we already have. So the idea around this was to introduce solar street lighting, of course, for our lighting at night, to introduce LED lighting to cut down on our energy costs, to introduce solar water heating for the students who live in our hostels, and to introduce solar grid tie solutions for our students who live again in the hostels and the offices for all our electrical needs. So this is a plan that is ongoing, and according to the research that we did extensively, we found out that when we implement this plan, we're going to cut down our energy costs by 68%. Moving to the other thematic pillar that we really emphasized and focused on was waste management, and we went through this through an integrated solid waste management system. And what this does is it introduces different angles of waste management. So there's recycling, there's reusing, there's reducing, and this culminated in us introducing coded dustbins in different parts of the school, so that our students will be able to sort waste and segregate waste at source. We also now embarked on trainings with different stakeholders for students to understand the benefits of waste. There's something called waste to wealth. We really benefited so much on those trainings. And then the other thing was, of course, to do occasional cleanup so that we can better the community around us. The other thing that we focused on was water management, owing to the fact that Daystar is in an arsal area. We, of course, needed to have water to irrigate our trees, our fruit trees. And what we did was rainwater harvesting for that. And the final thematic pillar that we focused on was sustainable agriculture, where we moved from traditional farming, so to speak, to hydroponics and aquaponics. And how we approached this was we can have more food for people in the school. We can raise money through this food by selling it, and students can also benefit by learning skills on farming. Now, those are the 5 things that we implemented. Now, I'd like to move on to my slides on, Jack, if you might move to the other slide on how can higher education work with youth on climate change. So what I've just presented is a case study for the Environmental Club of Daystar and thematic pillars that it's set. And I'd like to take a moment of your time to take you through how higher education institutions, other higher education institutions can work with youth on climate change. And we believe we can have this in a couple of ways. Number one is, of course, centering on the biggest stakeholders of the university, which are the students, who are the youth, is introducing youth leadership and civics. And what we look at is we need to support our students to integrate the environmental sustainability in their day-to-day lives. So how can you do this? Of course, is through creating awareness, which now gives them the urge to understand how to implement solutions. So you teach them that through, of course, introducing education on sustainability issues, which now leads them to effecting behavior and attitude change. We also advocate for universities to put environmental issues at the center stage. And now this can be linked to the behavior and attitude change campaigns, as well as educating them on matter sustainability. The other very important thing that we see as being very beneficial to this is, of course, having community engagement centers. And this will have an effect of where you can have stronger collaboration with communities. And how we look at it is having community directorate centers where people can come have meetings and decide and say, this is the problem that you're currently facing in this community. What are the solutions to it, and how can the university help us achieve this? Through this, of course, you can have a space where students can apply the knowledge they learn in their classrooms to improve the living conditions of the people outside the gates of the university. If you can move on to the next slide, please. Yeah, we also see civics as being a very important part of achieving success on matters of environmental sustainability. So we need to have students at the heart of the result. We did a research with UNES, and we realized the greatest sustainability metric for any university is the lifestyle and behavior choices that they make for the next 70 years of their lives. So if we can build this sustainability journey to students from when they join till when they finish their university journey, it goes a long way to also effecting change to the future generation. And how we can do this, of course, is by introducing a student green council. We introduced ours, and ours was now the Daystar Environmental Club. And now what this does is it aids the students to get support for action and provide feedback on progress. We can move to the next slide. So why this approach? We believe that youth groups, CBOs, and CSOs, which are community-based organizations and civil society organizations, they are very much uniquely placed to provide motivating environmental education and opportunities for engagement. Now, through this, we can provide empowerment, community activism, and we can encourage individual and group work, team building, and social interaction. We believe as well that through encouraging students and youth empowerment programs, we can, of course, have an incredible impact on students, youth, and the larger community by increasing access to opportunities, removing barriers to education, and development of skills for the long term. So this fits into our end goal, where we like to say we want to educate and implement environmental ethics for sustainable change and generational impact. Thank you. I think I'd stop at that, owing to Marta's time.
Okay, thank you so much, Chris. From Chris' presentation, I've learned one thing, that when we include the young people at the table and not on the menu of key environmental decision making, and also leaving no one behind, we can really achieve a lot. And you can see from Chris' presentation that he has done a lot with the Daystar University, because he was given that chance to take part in climate designing solutions for climate crisis. Our third and final speaker is Sandra Goldmark, a person who wears many hats. She's a designer, a professor, and an entrepreneur of regenerative and circular climate responses. She serves as a senior assistant dean for interdisciplinary engagement at the Columbia Climate School and the director of sustainability and climate action and associate professor of professional practice at Barnard College. From 2013 to 2019, Sandra founded and operated FixUp, a social enterprise repair service dedicated to healthy and circular patterns of consumption. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and many more. She's also the author of Fixation, How to Have Stuff Without Breaking the Planet. Welcome, Sandra, and please share with us on how Columbia University is offering solution to climate crisis.
Thank you, Jack. I'm going to turn on my camera. But if this creates bandwidth issues for anybody, just pop it in the chat. So can we go to the next slide? Oh no, the blue slide, the intro slide. Yeah. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here and so exciting to see people from all over the world in the chat. My name is Sandra Goldmark. I'm actually representing two institutions today, two affiliated institutions. I am the Director of Sustainability and a professor at Barnard College, which is a women's college affiliated with Columbia University. Columbia University has recently launched a new climate school. So this is like how there's a law school and a medical school and a school of public health. This is the first new school at the university's history in 25 years, and it's a school dedicated to climate change. And what I'm going to talk about today, oh, and I want to share that my home department, originally I was a theatrical set designer, and that's the field that I still teach in. And I just share that so that I think it's important to acknowledge that students from any department on campus, I think, have a role in climate action. And I always like to say to my students, look, even if you're the theater professor or the theater student, you have a role to play here, an important role. So I want to share two stories, one from Columbia and one from Barnard. It's a little bit about what we're doing, but it's also a lot about how we're doing it, how we're really using partnerships to take climate action, to lift up student voices, and to create change on our campus. So, okay, now we can go to the leaf slide. There we go. So the climate school, as a school tackling climate, is by definition interdisciplinary. We are by definition trying to bring together expertise, faculty, students, researchers from across this really big university, Columbia University. There's so many people working on climate from so many different angles, from paleoceanography to legal issues to climate mobility. So how do you bring these people together and create ways for them to really come up with effective partnerships? One of the core concepts of the school is that the climate crisis demands this type of interdisciplinary inclusive teams, that no one group is going to be able to tackle this on their own. So one of the structures that we've built, among many, I'm just sharing one example, is the Earth Networks. These are bottom up, where students, faculty, and staff can propose a network, a topic that they're interested in. For example, we have ones now on food, climate justice, mobility, disaster resilience. And they build a loose organization of stakeholders from around the university to generate research projects, curriculum. It's kind of an incubator. The idea is that these networks can go on and continue to pursue their projects, pursue research funding, create courses, but that this is a way to bring together people, not just from the climate school, but from all over the university. And as you can see, we have 35 schools, centers, and departments represented. Next slide.
And I just wanted to share, so how do we deal with these big, messy networks? How do we make them effective? We want them to be loose. I think of it as a garden. These networks are where all of the little seeds and ideas are going to grow. But we want to develop a shared language, right? We've got legal scholars working with theater designers, working with scientists. So we created a series of workshops this spring to really begin to develop a toolkit around partnership, around collaboration. And you can see here the 4 topics of our workshops. We felt that these were some core skills that everybody at this new climate school might benefit from. And we built these workshops together, not saying we know how to do this and we're going to teach you, but we know that people all across this university have these skills. What's working for you? And how can we develop a shared language? We also, the networks provide opportunities for external partnerships. Just one example, our food network is beginning a partnership with the Stone Barn Center for Food and Agriculture. Students have been working with the people at Stone Barns to develop capstone projects and research proposals. And it's a really exciting example of bringing students, researchers, faculty, and external partners together. Next slide. So now I'm going to shift to my second example of how we're tackling this issue. This is Barnard College. So Barnard is an undergraduate college affiliated with Columbia. It's a women's college, but we have students from Columbia and Barnard, so it's a very diverse community. Big picture, our approach to sustainability and climate action acknowledges that it's everything that we do at the university. It needs to be infused, at the college, in everything, in what we're teaching and how we're equipping our students, in our finances, our investment decisions, our governance, how we make decisions as an institution, and of course, our campus culture and our operations. That's a big bucket. In there is our emissions from buildings, our waste, our student experience, so much. So I'm going to zoom a little bit into that bucket. I can't share everything, but I'll share a few examples. Next slide, or one example really. One of our big initiatives at Barnard is called Circular Campus. We're building a framework to holistically use circular economy strategies to look at waste, design, construction, deconstruction, our green spaces, reuse and sustainable purchasing, food and dining. The goal of this framework is to reduce scope 3 emissions, reduce the environmental impacts, and also support student access and affordability, support community connections and resilience. We believe that these go hand in hand, and all of our decisions about the environment should benefit our students, should benefit our community neighbors and partners. And I have a great example to show I think where it's working, where those co-benefits are really evident. Next slide. But first, before we get into that specific example, a little bit on why Circular Campus. I was really struck by what Martha and Chris were saying about where their university is located and what their needs are. We are an urban campus, very crowded, very dense. And when we looked at our emissions, scope 1, our fuel emissions are significant. Our electricity emissions are significant, but you can see that in the graph, our scope 3 emissions, our food, our waste, our purchases, our travel are a huge chunk of our footprint on this campus. So when we look at those emissions, where they're coming from, we begin to see how circularity can really provide a way in. So we did this deep dive. We're working on weaving this into a lot of decision making, and I want to share with you, if we go to the next slide, a specific action in terms of internal reuse, right? So if procurement of goods is driving our waste and is also driving our scope 3 emissions, we ask ourselves, how can we build up internal reuse on campus? This is something that has been student-led for years, and our goal was to take the work that the students had done on reuse and faculty and our libraries and really amplify it, scale it, and resource it. So we partnered with a company called Reaply that has created an internal reuse platform. We launched just at the beginning of this academic year. We've started with our students. So those 740 users, for starters, are largely students. We've diverted waste from landfill. We've reduced emissions. And what we're doing is we're trying to acknowledge that circularity, exchanging goods, regenerative practices, they're not new. But typically institutions, at least my institution, hasn't historically resourced them or named them as a powerful climate action and a powerful emissions driver. So by institutionally putting our money and our mouth behind reuse and by facilitating these exchanges, now we're moving into doing it for university-owned assets. We are saying this ancient practice, this community-led practice, let's name it, let's make it visible, and let's use it as the powerful tool that it is. Next slide. So that was the what, right? All of the, what are we doing? How are we tackling climate action? How are we using circularity? How are we leveraging reuse? This is back to the how. It relates to the story of Columbia University of intentionally trying to build networks and partnerships and acknowledging that we can't do this work. No one, my office, my sustainability office, can't shift the culture of the university, can't reduce emissions on its own. So for every initiative we do, we think very strategically about who our campus partners are and who our off-campus partners are. So for the reuse initiative, on the left, you see some of our internal partners, the purchasing department. Access Barnard is our office that supports first-gen low-income students. And they've been great partners because we are saving students money, and that's exactly one of the things that that office wants to do. The Student Government Association has been an incredible partner and driver. In fact, one of the ways this whole reuse initiative really started rolling, my office had been advocating for a long time, but a student came forward and had done a petition about access to art supplies, dance shoes, science textbooks, and how expensive these materials were for students, and how some students weren't able to take certain courses because they couldn't afford the supplies. And it was a really powerful motivator to say, yes, we need to promote internal reuse. We need to promote this sharing and not let these objects go to landfill or go to waste when our students need them. The facilities department, we've been partnering with our Office of Community Engagement and Inclusion and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, again, because we see these threads of work as interconnected. What benefits our community can benefit our environment and vice versa. So this leads to the external partners. We have been building a circular campus model, and now we are expanding to what we're calling circular community. We're starting by sharing that reuse platform with local partners like the Interchurch Center or other organizations nearby, International House. We worked with Ripley from the private sector. Blocks Hub is a convener of private sector circular economy entities, and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So this is just showing how we're really trying to lean into the concept that both circularity and more broadly climate action have to be built and moved forward in partnership with diverse partners. No one office, no one discipline is going to be able to do it. Last slide. I think the next one's the last one. Yeah. So that is it. I just wanted to give you a little peek into the Columbia Climate School networks and a peek into Barnard College's sustainability program, especially our Circular Campus initiative. And I'm so excited to hear what you all are doing and how we might partner with you. And I'll turn my video off for bandwidth. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra, for the presentation. What I've taken from that presentation is that we need to infuse everything with the green concept, especially the circular concept. And also we need to work with diverse partners so that we create a network of implementers and believers. Now I will hand over back to Chris, who will lead us in this session of discussion, questions and discussions. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you so much, Jack. This has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I'd like to open the floor for questions, and I'd like to start with those in the chat box. Stephanie, I see Stephanie asks if our university has created a space for student engagement on climate change issues. Stephanie, if you allow me, I'd like to answer you on that. Yes, through our Student Green Council, we used to have weekly, which now shifted to monthly meetings where we discuss issues of concern. So where are we going to plant the next trees in their community that has pollution issues? And now we've moved further from that, and we introduced something called the Inter-University Climate Leaders Panel. So this is targeting all the universities in Kenya, but for a start, we've started with the private universities in Kenya to effect the same, the greening agenda across all universities. I hope that answers your question. I'd like to take another question from Ate Ahmed, who says in the chat box, he always observes that there's a significant shortage or lack regarding well-trained and skilled teaching staff or faculties at many universities, and also using the best teaching methods involving climate education in teaching practices and research. He asks, how far do you see the importance of training higher education staff or faculties of climate change, and how can we implement the training programs targeting the higher education staff? So I think I'd like to take this question to Martha and Sandra.
Sure. Martha, do you want to go ahead?
Sorry, yeah, thank you. A very interesting question indeed. Let me talk about it from the Kenyan perspective, which I think will speak much more or commonly about the African institution, where you find until recently, environmental issues have just been issues that are mentioned, and people talk about them, but really you do not have the initiative to go out and train people and create teachers or even faculty who are in line with what is happening to our environment. But in Kenya, for example, now is you find that it's almost like a requirement for whether it's a high school teacher, a primary school teacher, faculty training or working within the university to have a minimum understanding of environmental issues. But then sometimes that's where it gets just, you know, there are environmental problems, you know, there is issue with climate change. But then until the universities go out and create a platform, create an enabling environment where the faculty will be required as they plan their lessons over the year, as they create their course outlines, really they mainstream environmental issues. And that's one of the things that have happened in Daystar, that any major that is taught in Daystar, other than the general education course that is taken by every Daystar university, even when you develop a new major, there's an expectation that part of what you put in that major will be required to speak about environmental issues, matters of climate change. How can you help the young people understand the whole idea of bringing the young people to the forefront of the platform, talking about environmental issues. And that has worked very well in Daystar. But then I'll ask, is that happening in every university, every school? No. So there is need much more to create more faculty who do not just take environmental issues, climate issue talk as tea talk when they're just having their normal talk, but people that are active, people that have these issues at the center of their heart, and they can actually action them through, because of my many years of teaching, I've learned that there is not a single course or lesson that you can teach that will not give you a platform to talk about environmental issues, because everything that we do and work around requires resources, and harvesting of resources ends up bringing climate change issues. So I agree, we need more faculty, and probably now create ways to either sensitize the faculty that are there, train them, so that we can have a better trained faculty. I agree. Many faculty members just give what I'll call lip service to environmental issues.
I love what you said, Martha, about every course, every department should include these topics, does include these topics, and I think that's the goal. And I wish, as you said, that we could just sort of mandate everybody, but that's not possible right now at my institution. So what we've been doing to move ourselves to that goal, if there's people on the call who may be in the same boat, is a number of things. First of all, we started by just bringing faculty together. We had a number of faculty who were, let's say, interested in environmental issues and knew that their disciplines or their courses related, but they weren't quite sure how to do it. How do I bring this into my syllabus? How does it relate to what I'm already teaching? So we created workshops where faculty could talk with each other and look at their syllabi and begin to incorporate modules. We're building out co-teaching so that we can get faculty together in the classroom. So maybe you have an art historian and a scientist in the room together, and that becomes a way to open up those conversations. So we're acknowledging that not everybody has to have been trained in this issue or feel like a total expert in order to bring it into their classroom and into their syllabus. And I'm going to drop in the chat a resource we built for our faculty. It's a sustainability pedagogy resource guide that we're using to supplement those peer-to-peer workshops.
Thank you so much, Martha and Sandra. I think that's a very hearty discussion. And I believe what Martha said is very important, that there's not a single course in her whole career that, she's seen that you can not have an angle of environment. I think it's important to sensitize faculty and staff on issues of environmental conservation. And thank you, Sandra, for introducing the concept of creating a co-teaching space to open up conversations on sustainability as well. I think that's very important in the journey of environmental conservation. I'd like to take another question from Michelle, which is specifically for Sandra Goldmark. And Michelle asks, should love to hear more about the magnitude of the ROI on the reuse strategies to save students money and increase their access to educational and extracurricular activities. She asks, do you have a dollar saved per student metric or stories that you can share?
Sure. So we're just 1 year in, and I think it's something like $20,000 worth of exchanges on the platform, and we have about 3,000 students. So it's still pretty small for our community. But our hope is that as the platform grows, more students will use it, and also more importantly, the institution. Like every institution, we buy a lot of desks and chairs and computers and books, and we believe that one of our arguments to the organization is that if we can be saving money on materials and supplies, we can be funneling that towards our students, we can be funneling it towards our community. There's it's very wasteful in terms of materials, and it's also very wasteful in terms of money to be buying all those materials. So we're just 1 year in, and the users on our platform are still largely students. So the dollar value of goods is pretty low still, but I'm confident that it will go up significantly as we get more administrators on board.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for the insights. I believe the program will pick up, and you've done a wonderful and amazing job of having over 3,000 students and raising over $20,000 US. I think this has been a wonderful Q&A session. I think I've learned a lot, both from Sandra and Martha. I'd like to take it back to Jack just to finalize on the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris and the panelists for giving us great information about these the activities that you are doing at your different schools, universities, and your sphere of life. I would also like to take this back to my colleagues who will give us final thoughts and conclude the webinar. Of course, we have taken much of your time, but it has been a great webinar. And if you want to get more from this discussion, then please join our communities of practice.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you all of you for this this dialogue. It's been really fun. I wish we had tea so we could just continue together. So we are closing this webinar. As far as the next events are concerned, we from the communities of practice, we will let you know. But please, we want to hear from you. please share your stories. Let us know if there's a practice that you'd like to share with all of us, and we're a good platform to use to do so. Please do keep an eye on this platform, the YouthPower platform. It's our key communication platform, but let us know if you have stories. We'd be very happy to showcase your work. If you have questions, keep them coming in and use the YouthPower platform to do so. Thank you very much to our speakers. It was fantastic, from Kenya to the United States and from all over the world. Thank you for being there. Have a great weekend and stay tuned to youthpower.org. Bye. Bye, everyone. Stay safe.
Bye. Kwaheri.
Bye.
Kwaheri.